Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today, I want to talk about a book that I read recently, one that is in a series that I've been exploring, unfortunately. About a princess who discovers that she is a princess and then has to deal with that all throughout the rest of her high school career. I am referring to Princess on the Brink. I believe it's the 8th book in the Princess Diaries series. So close to the very end. For those that don't know, this is by Meg Cabot. She's a terrible writer, at least going by this series. I haven't read anything else that she's written, but if the Princess Diaries series is this bad and she can't even write young adult fiction, imagine what her other work is like. It can't be good. Maybe I'll explore that down the road, but not today. Today I want to talk about the Princess Diaries series. So to recap, for those who haven't read the first 7 books, Mia discovers that she is a princess and goes about trying to negotiate the terms of this princess-ship. In terms of what her grandmother will allow, and retaining some aspect of her New Yorker identity, where she fights for the underprivileged, fights for the rights of minorities, is an environmentalist, and cares about those such things. Over time, she has a couple of relationships with Kenny, her science lab partner, which does not go so well. She then gets into a relationship with Michael, her best friend's brother. It's pretty successful initially, although once Michael goes to college, things get a little hairy as a growing rift begins to form. And so Mia is also involved in the affairs of Genovia. She helps remove a deadly algae from the Genovian Bay, which allows the fishermen to make money again. She gets parking meters installed in Genovia, which allow for them to raise more revenue in terms of tourism. So things are going pretty okay for Mia at this point. And at the beginning of this book, she is starting her junior year, which is interesting because it took 4 books for her to finish her freshman year, but only 2 books for her to finish her like sophomore year, which I think is ridiculous. But anyways, that's where we are as of this story. Without further ado, let's talk about Princess on the Brink. I will do a summary, a little analysis, and we will move on from there. Princess on the Brink starts with Mia Thermopolis. She has begun her junior year. She is still involved with Michael Moskowitz, her best friend's brother. She is thinking about running for student body president once again, like she was last year. It was pretty successful last year, although it was kind of troubling when she encountered some financial issues. But she's been working hard and attending princess lessons. Unfortunately, Michael invites her to a date at a ramen place in New York City. And there he informs her that he will be moving to Japan. He got a sort of internship offer from a robotics company, and he believes that it'll be good for him to go there. Mia is a bit unhappy because of the long-distance relationship nature of it, and she's really trying to get Michael to stay in New York. However, Michael informs her that he's always been a little uncomfortable about Mia and his relationship. Because she's a princess, he knows that he's going to have to lag behind, and that because he's just a commoner, he's never going to be on equal status with her unless he does something like make his name in the field of robotics. So he's really doing this to to benefit their relationship in the long run, it would seem. And he also talks about how like going to Japan will help him deal with the fact that he's not having sex with Mia. They've decided to wait, but he really wants to have sex. It's kind of weird that he's guilting her into that. It doesn't feel like it's within the character that's already been established. Michael just notes that he's always been kind of intimidated by her princess ship. Mia's uncomfortable with this, but she chooses to deal with it as the story progresses. Mia decides at this point that she wants to have sex with Michael as a means of getting him to stay in New York City. Kind of unusual, but her grandmother is going to be out for a little bit, so she decides to take over the penthouse and have a romantic date there. On the date, Michael informs her that no amount of sex will convince him to stay in New York City, that this robotics opportunity is a huge deal for him and will benefit their relationship in the long run. He reiterates that once again. And Mia talks about how her virginity is a special gift or something like that. And Michael tells her that he's not a virgin at all. He's already had sex, which disturbs Mia because of the way Michael describes it. One, he's not a virgin anymore, which she thought was true for him. But also, there's the fact that Michael was so blasé. Oh, I had sex with this girl that I knew. She was in a relationship at the time. We fooled around a little bit, which doesn't fit with how Mia thinks of sex, which is very reasonable for her. So that causes a big fight between them, where Mia chooses to break it off at this point, and she leaves. Michael tries to contact her on the phone and through email, messenger. It doesn't work out for her, unfortunately, or for him, unfortunately, because she feels there's nothing left to be said. Michael and her seem incompatible at this point. Lily confronts Mia about this and is like, you have different beliefs about sex, but that doesn't mean Michael lied to you or anything about that. You never asked about this part of Michael's life, and you're making a bigger deal about sex than it actually is. And Lily has some points, but she's kind of a jerk to Mia, and so as a result, her boyfriend, John Paul Abernathy IV, who we met in the previous book, chooses to break up with Lily. It turns out that JP and Mia are lab partners this year in their chemistry class, and they grow closer together. With Mia finding out that JP and her have a lot in common, and after they break up, Lily and JP asks Mia out on a date, and even kisses her, which Michael shows up and sees that, and then he just leaves, kind of greatly unhappy. Mia follows him to the airport, but isn't able to catch him before his airplane leaves, and she's deeply saddened by this. She agrees to go on a date with JP, and then before she does, she writes an email to Michael and apologizes for what happened between them, and says that she wanted to do more. However, whether Michael will see that email remains to be seen. That's where the story ends, right there. In terms of analysis, the story ends at a really weird place. It has odd pacing because so much of the story is spent on the breakup, the act of breaking up and Mia's feelings around it. But there's not a lot of lead into the story, and there's not a lot of aftermath of this breakup. It's just Mia goes to the breakup. John Paul asks her out, and then she sends a letter to Michael, and that's the end of the story. It's really bizarre because it feels like there's something missing to the story, or like the structure of the story is so wonky. You could just attribute that to Meg Cabot being a horrible writer, but it's also possible she didn't have a complete story at this time, and this is what she sent to the editors, and they're so used to her crappy work that they just accepted it as is and chose to publish it. Maybe Meg Cabot will explore the aftermath more in the next volume, but again, why would you seek out the next volume if this one feels so incomplete? I keep saying that about each and every installment of the series, but it holds true here. So I feel like the odd pacing really ruins the story in a lot of ways. That isn't to say this story is completely without merit. One thing that I really like this story is the dichotomy that Meg Cabot shows between Mia Thermopolis and Princess Amelia Rinaldi. Both aspects of Mia's identity constantly at war with one another since the first book. Unfortunately, the first book was the only book that really did a wonderful job of exploring this dichotomy and Mia trying to negotiate both aspects of her identity to allow her to, be Mia Thermopolis and also be a princess, which she didn't really want to be, but she knew that she had to accept. I feel like you see that really well. Meg Cabot writes it really well in the beginning of this story, so allow me to read to you a passage from this. Prince Philippe, you're not Mia Thermopolis anymore, honey. Mia, blinking with astonishment. I'm not? Then who am I? Prince Philippe. You were Amelia Mignonette Grimaldi Thermopolis Rinaldo, Princess of Genovia. That's from the screenplay that Mia has been writing throughout this story to give the true events of her life, rather than what the media has been showing of her life, kind of exaggerated events. What I find fascinating is this is the first screenplay. The first scene from the screenplay that Mia chooses to show the audience, that Meg Cabot chooses to show the audience. And I feel it's significant because it seems like Mia's acknowledging, like, you're no longer Mia Thermopolis. You're Princess Amelia. This is who you have to be. And you see it throughout the story. Michael brings it up. Like, he's never going to be good enough for Mia anymore because she's no longer Mia Thermopolis. She's Princess Amelia. Once she graduates, he'll have to be her consort or something like that, always behind her, never on equal footing. And so he doesn't really want that. Meanwhile, there's John Paul Abernathy IV, a man of a teenager of elite status coming from a fancy family, who is more on par with Amelia. With Princess Amelia. And so I feel like Meg Cabot is pushing them two together to highlight that shift from Mia to Amelia, Princess Amelia, which I like. I feel like that it could have been done better, though, because, again, it seems like this series was always about negotiating the terms of her princesship, where she could have both aspects of her life and be comfortable. But it seems like here Meg Cabot is saying that you can't have both aspects of that life, that she's pushing Mia in one direction. And again, like, what does that say for the teenage girls who are reading this? Like, society has a view of you and you can't be anything else. Even if you want a specific type of person, you can't have that person. You can only stick to your social class, which is a weird message to be sending to teenage girls, to anybody. It's a weird message. And I really wish that the princesship had come into more of a factor in this story. As it stands, like, you could substitute princess with lumberjack, and the story wouldn't be any different. Like, Mia, you're training to become a lumberjack or something like that. I feel like that really hindered the message that Meg Cabot was trying to send. So, a good idea. It just, it could have been handled by a better writer. Another thing that I really liked about the story was how Meg Cabot handled the breakup. I thought it was good and very sad, and it got at exactly what Meg Cabot wanted you to get at. Like, it's one of the rare areas where she succeeds. Because the breakup was over something that's very relatable. Like, Mia thought that Michael was lying to her about having sex before because they have different views of how sex is. That's how relationships are. Sometimes you find out that you're incompatible because you have different views of sex, of a relationship, of whatever it may be. And so that's what got at them. And sure, they could have resolved those differences by talking it out, but it just kept escalating, and that makes sense because Mia's a teenager. They're both teenagers. They're having difficulty, understanding their emotions, and they react very extremely. And Mia reacts by breaking up with Michael there on the spot, and it kind of sucks, and she immediately regrets it. And at the very end of the story, she apologizes to him, but knows that that's never going to be good enough because what was said, and you can't undo that. And what he saw, her kissing John Paul Abernathy, that damaged the relationship, probably to a great extent. So I really liked how she handled that. However, again, there are some caveats here, with Meg Cabot being too quick to have Mia get over the relationship. She didn't technically get over it, but Meg Cabot seemed in a real hurry to get Mia together with John Paul Abernathy. for reasons I'm not really sure why. You could have just had Mia deal with the relationship and used more of the story, more time to tell that story of Mia learning to live with herself, learning to understand what she wants in a relationship. And that's not what Meg Cabot did here. It felt a little rushed and not quite hitting the spot. And the last thing I want to talk about is John Paul Abernathy IV. Meg Cabot was very transparent in her efforts to set him up as the next romantic interest for Mia, without doing any of the work that she did for Michael. Like she defined Michael as a character. Meg Cabot was really great at that, and I grew to like Michael because he was an interesting person. But then she kept like tearing apart at his character in weird ways for every book after they got together, and it doesn't really make any sense to me, at least. And John Paul Abernathy shows up in the last book, and Meg Cabot does no work to build up his character or let you know who he is. Only that he has the same interest as Mia. Mia's like, oh, I like this. And John Paul Abernathy is like, oh, I also like that. Aren't we perfect for one another? And it comes off very, very sycophantic. Like John Paul is only telling Mia what she wants to hear. And I wish that was intentional so that Mia could eventually find out that, he's scum and only seeking to be with her because of her princess-ship. But that's not Meg Cabot. Meg Cabot is a terrible writer, and she could never hope to tell a story with that kind of nuance. So I think JP is a loser, and it's weird that she set up this relationship to replace the one with Michael. So bad all around. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Princess on the Brink, the 8th volume of the Princess Diaries series. Pretty terrible book. I do not recommend it at this point. I don't recommend the series either. Maybe just read the first book. It's pretty quality. I would say there are a lot of good points about it, and you don't need to continue on with the rest of the series because after the first book, you probably get the point. I'm still going to explore the next books, the final 2, I think, in the series. Should be interesting. I don't think they're going to be any good, and in fact, if the JP relationship continues, I'm going to hate it. Anyways, those are my thoughts. If you have something to say about my review, or you read this before and you want to comment on it, comment below. I would love to hear from you. Let's have a discussion and trash Meg Cabot as much as possible. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about how terrible Meg Cabot is as a writer and how very lucky we were to get a Princess Diaries movie that didn't suck. And in the meantime, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and regal travels. Farewell.